Chadron, the Northwestern Nebraska Panhandle town founded by Frances Maria Brainard O'Linn, show 062. I'm Mitchell Chadrow, and this is the Listen Up Show podcast. Fannie was not only the founder of a town, she was a noteworthy pioneer for settling the West, a school teacher, a postmaster, the fifth woman admitted to the bar in Nebraska, a community builder, and most of all, a hero that should be studied by all in business and life. What are we going to learn today? What legacy did Fannie leave, and how can her lessons apply to your everyday business and life? Why do an entire podcast on Fannie O'Linn? After doing research on her story, I was shocked that even people in the town of Chadron, Nebraska, know little about her, let alone Nebraskans, especially her story and how it applies to business. I started asking myself, why has this most amazing woman somehow been placed on the back seat of history? Maybe until now, there has been no one to be her voice, or maybe she has no relatives or family to tell her story. It really seemed unfair because she should at least be on a short list of notable Nebraskan women. To me, she really seemed to have been forgotten, but I'm changing all of that now. She is unforgettable. I mean, we all have heard of William Jennings Bryan, the orator and Nebraskan politician, read and heard stories of the travelings of Lewis and Clark, know about the showmanship of William F. Cody, and of course, the notoriety of Charlie Starkweather. However, it's not every day that a woman in the mid-1880s helps start up a town, builds a community of people in the heartland of America, becomes a pioneer settling the West, is the fifth woman to become an attorney in Nebraska, the 11th registered with the United States Supreme Court. She was a postmaster, a midwife, a school teacher, and so much more. Fannie was born back on April 13th, 1848, in a small town called Magnolia, the county seat of Harrison County, Iowa. Fannie graduated at the State University of Iowa in Iowa City, and she was actually valedictorian and the youngest member of the class at the State University of Iowa, right there in the heart of Iowa City. She became a teacher at Magnolia High School and then principal at Buena Vista High School. When her father moved to Magnolia, Iowa, it only had a population of 500. However, by 1876, Magnolia was removed as the county seat, which left the place with but little else than a small local trade. Hallowed by the name Magnolia, to many a pioneer who knew the place as Harrison County's best town. You can get the show notes back at mitchellchadrow.com/show062. Sign up back at my website at mitchellchadrow.com/sign-up. Get the latest in my blog posts and podcasts and free resource guides just by signing up back at my website, mitchellchadrow.com/sign-up. Women's history is rich in the Panhandle of Northwestern Nebraska, but at the forefront of this is another true hero, a pioneer that must be recognized now and has been uncovered. For me, researching her story has been a journey of discovery, uncovering this amazing woman's story from various sources that has led me to so many other wonderful stories that I will also tell you here on future podcasts. I'm glad O'Lynn's story can be shared with my Listen Up audience, and I hope her wonderful story helps motivate, inspire, and help you in business. It's like a Wild Buffalo Bill Cody show on tour with Fannie, and being able to take you across the country to share all this history that she created in the communities where she lived. If I had to describe her in 3 words, adventurous, courageous, dynamic. Our startup round is sponsored by Startups Smarter. You need help starting that business, whether it's forming a business, establishing your presence online, or help testing your ideas. My listeners can sign up back at startupsmarter.com/Mitchell, get a free one-page website on their platform, and a free guide, How to Start Up Smarter. So go ahead, go over to Startups Smarter, that's StartupsSmarter.com/Mitchell. That's right, my name, MITCHELL. As my listeners get that free one-page free website, help you starting up that business. Now, back to the show. Fannie came from a family of doers, and their great work ethic and business acumen most certainly had a positive influence on her. Her dad, Judge Daniel Egbert Bernard, was also a pioneer and Fannie's role model, both in her father's deeds and his actions. You see, Fannie's dad was Harrison County, Iowa's judge from 1857 to 1862, and a member of the State Board of Education for several years. He held the office of county treasurer and recorder from 1856 to 1858 and was agent for the post office department at Washington County, Iowa, looking after delinquencies. He held this later position for 4 years with its headquarters usually in Iowa City, but most often he was out in the field examining postal matters in Iowa. Both of Fannie's brothers were entrepreneurs. George and Orville together started their own newspaper publishing business in 1859 called the Magnolia Weekly Republican, and then later the Dunlap Reporter. After several years, the first newspaper business was sold, and neither George and Fannie's brother George decided to farm and carry mail. Fannie was destined to also be involved with the post office. In 1854, a post office was being set up in her hometown, at that time Magnolia, and Fannie's dad was involved in becoming postmaster a year after that post office was established back in 1855. Her brother George also became postmaster in Magnolia, and in 1862 was subsequently appointed postmaster of the House of Representatives in Iowa. George decided to lease the newspaper to a Judge Ford instead of selling it outright. Magnolia's chief feature were its schools and its churches, and aside from being the county seat of Harrison County, Iowa, this is what contributed towards the upbuilding of the place. The early schools were first kept in private houses. In 1858, the first school building was provided at that point. It was a poor shack of a house, 2 stories high, designed for a graded school. It was used for school purposes until 1866. You see, this is where Fannie first began to teach. However, by 1868, she met and married her husband, Dr. Daniel O'Linn. Dr. O'Linn was a Civil War veteran who participated in Sherman's March to the Sea and was a renowned physician and surgeon. Fannie, her husband, and 2 sons at that time decided to move to Blair County, Iowa in 1872, where Dr. O'Linn set up a business with Dr. S.B. Taylor. The year before, her brother George had the itch to get back into the newspaper business, so in 1871, he started his second paper, as I had mentioned earlier, the Dunlap Reporter. It's no wonder why the family was described in Harrison County, Iowa, as being strong, high-minded, and with true characters. Tragically, Fannie's husband died suddenly in 1880. It left Fannie alone with 2 sons, and by that time she also had a daughter. She had to rely on herself, so she decided to immediately take that principal position back in the Blair schools and took a leadership role in education in Washington County for 4 years. Our fast pitch is sponsored by Chadrow.net. That's CHADROW.net. Chadrow Law, made smarter. Legal service solutions for life. You need a will, a power of attorney, a living will. You need to set up a business. You need startup formation documents or help with a real estate transaction or litigation issues. Go over to Chadrow.net. They have informative articles that will empower you about everything in the law, and they also have free resource guides for estate planning, digital assets, business startups. So check them out at Chadrow.net and learn more about the law. Okay, back to the show. Something fundamentally changed in America in 1884. The Homestead Act was passed. It provided anyone either a brand new start or a chance to own 160 acres to own their own land. Fannie viewed it as a new opportunity, a new chance, a fresh start. She made the decision to move with her children from the place she always knew and loved and continue west towards Nebraska. Her plan, settle in a small frontier settlement and call it O'Linn. There were many twists and turns in that journey, and like all business-minded entrepreneurs, your best plans don't always go as you want them. The question for Fannie and you is how to actually handle all those twists and turns when confronted with those obstacles. That's what makes you courageous, strong, and heading for your own destiny. You see, the town of O'Linn was not merely being named such because Fannie had an ego, although she had every right to be. Again, she was an accomplished, well-achieved person before she even moved west to Nebraska to settle O'Linn. But the name was actually to honor the memory of her eldest son, who had died shortly after their move to what would eventually become Dawes County, the Northwestern Nebraska Panhandle. Fannie homesteaded near the junction of the White River and Chadron Creek, then located in Sioux County near Dakota Junction, but today it's known as Dawes County. Her humble abode was merely one room, 14 by 16 foot claim cabin, half dug out, half sod. See, she was actually one of the few earliest settlers in Dawes County. That summer, she noted that the only houses were around Fort Robinson and that they had only to throw their lines in the White River to have catfish, and they found 49 different varieties of wildflowers. As I mentioned earlier, when her son Daniel Egbert was accidentally killed, locals began calling the settlement O'Linn in his honor. I also mentioned because of her father and brother's involvement with the postal system, she didn't waste any time. She applied for a post office in September of 1884, and that's how the name O'Linn stuck. One of the first shops to open was owned by another settler, Burr Sheldon. It didn't take long as others quickly followed, with a hardware store, a bank, a drugstore, and a saloon, some of which were operated out of tents before buildings could be erected. That December of 1884, the first Methodist church service in the county, known as the White River O'Linn Charge, which was held in the O'Linn cabin by Reverend Joseph Gray. Early in 1885, the population of O'Linn was advertised at 500, replete with 5 saloons and a dozen stores. Thus, when the Elkton, Fremont, and Missouri Valley Railroad began scouting the area of a right-of-way, Fannie felt certain that O'Linn would be the natural site for a depot and siding. Unfortunately, her optimism led her to ask for more money than the railroad felt was justified, and instead, they bought land some 6 miles distant at a site they named Bordeaux. In the summer of 1885, a county seat election for the new Dawes County chose Chadron on a vote of 582 to 3 for O'Linn. I have to think that the 3 votes Fannie received was her vote, her youngest son, and her daughter. So how was it that this pioneer, this dynamic, accomplished woman, didn't receive one other vote from any other person outside her family? In my research, it was partly due to another settler named Edward E. Egan, who started the first newspaper in the town. Surprising, it wasn't Fannie's brother Orville, who would also settle the area as well, but did not start his own newspaper in the town. And the fact that the railroad probably didn't like being told by Fannie the more aggressive terms that her homestead would become the location of the new railroad stop. More about that on another podcast, as I will do an entire story on Edward Egan, the person who got the town and railroad to rally around the name Chadron over O'Linn. Our wrap-up round is actually sponsored by Chadron. That's CHADRON.net. So that's Chadron.net. In honor of this special town of Chadron, the Chadron.net website is not just for people who live, go to school, or work in Chadron, or only for Nebraskans. It's a place to learn about the rich history of the heartland of America and all this area and surrounding territory for you and your family to learn more about how this magic city got started. Chadron is known as the Magic City, even though Fannie didn't get her wish to name Chadron O'Linn. She taught us in order for things to work out, you must pick up the pieces, dust yourself off, and keep moving. I became fascinated with Chadron because people would always ask me if I knew that there was a Chadrow, Nebraska, and that there is a fire company and sportswear on the internet called Chadrow. Both turned out to be errors on the internet, but never corrected. In a lot of ways, I'm actually glad, because if you go back to Chadron, that's CHADRON.net, you can learn more about the Chadrow for Chadron project, bringing more tourists and people to the area, and learn about our country's founding and the amazing stories of people that come. If you go back to Chadron.net, where these stories will help inspire, motivate you in your own life and business. Now, let me tell you more about this amazing town of Chadron. When the railroad arrived in July of 1885, O'Linn, or now Chadron, meaning the entire town, literally picked up and moved to the new site overnight. One store even kept operating while being trundled over the prairie. It was owned by Leventhal. How many towns are you aware of in the history of the United States that could or can just merely pick up and overnight move to a new location? A truly magical city. Despite the perceived setback of not having her homestead as the stop or name of the town, Fannie was determined, based out of her own character and grit, to move forward. You see, she also moved as well. And not only that, she became Chadron's first postmaster, later becoming what some say, again, the fifth female attorney in Nebraska. However, studying the law under the direction of her father, the judge, back in Iowa, she must have received great exposure to the law. Thus, some think she might have actually been the second practicing woman attorney in Nebraska. Whatever her ranking, Fannie O'Linn was one of the originators of the Northwest Nebraska's Teachers Association, one of the initial promoters of Chadron's library, and again, its first postmaster, becoming one of the most widely known and respected women in the Northwest, present at the first wedding, the first birth, and the first funeral in Dawes County. It doesn't stop there. For those who say, I have done all I can do in business and life, Fannie just kept going. She was the first female insurance broker, was also involved heavily in organizations such as the Women's Christian Temperance Union and the Women's Suffrage Movement. Yes, O'Linn battled tragedy throughout her life, but she persevered, playing a crucial role in the settlement and development of her communities, both in Iowa and Nebraska. I was driven by this story for so many reasons. Just think, she loses her husband, then her oldest son. She is on the western plains of Nebraska as a single woman in this really harsh, tough life of circumstances. And yet, through that, despite that all, she continued to push forward to her future and her destiny and her journey. To recap in conclusion, here is a list of this amazing woman's accomplishments that only a few ever achieve. She was admitted to the bar in 1885, was responsible for keeping the land office in Chadron, then started an abstract business. She started the town called O'Linn that eventually became Chadron. She was the first postmistress of the town and was one of the first female postmistresses. She even served as a midwife and is believed to have been responsible for helping to birth most of the children born in Dawes County from 1880 through 1910. Her life was complex, full, and varied. She battled with area ranchers and businessmen, was a correspondent for the Omaha Bee, served as president and historian for the Dawes County right there at Nebraska's Historical Association. She was a charter member of the Order of the Eastern Star in Chadron. Her influence even extended into raising the young woman who would grow to fame as Dr. Letta Stetter Hollingworth, a pioneer in women's and educational psychology at Columbia University. Unfortunately, her youngest son also predeceased her, and only her daughter, who had been born in Blair County, Iowa, would actually survive her. Her descendants eventually moved away from Dawes County, leaving no one to tell her story or recount her achievements until now. By 1890, 1891, she is actually listed as Mrs. Fannie O'Linn, attorney at law, notary public, abstracts, insurance, real estate, and loans. Her dad moves to Chadron around this time. The last years of Judge Brainard's life were spent in Chadron, Nebraska, with his daughter. He passed away on December 4th, 1892, at the age of 83. But his family buried him back in Magnolia, Iowa, where he spent most of his years. Back there at Magnolia Cemetery, Magnolia, Harrison County, Iowa. We all can learn something from folks like Fannie. I hope you all listened up and found out why it is so special and important to really hear her story. Fannie passed away on July 19th, 1926, at the age of 78. Her burial spot is there in Blair Cemetery, Blair, Washington County, Nebraska. Her grave marker is prominently displayed to honor her amazing legacy that she left for all those who want to listen up to the story she has left for everyone. Until next time, my trusted friends, please provide a well-written review in iTunes. Go over to mitchellchadrow.com/iTunes. It takes 2 minutes, but it helps others find the show. Subscribe anywhere. We are on Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, or any popular podcast aggregator. One of my favorite is actually Overcast.fm. So if you head on over to mitchellchadrow.com/overcast, you can subscribe on that podcast aggregator. Again, sign up back at my website for the latest podcasts, more articles, and send me an email about your business startup, and I'm happy to respond back at mitchellchadrow.com/signup. Thank you again, and I look forward to our next show.